It is a Monday morning, as I've mentioned in my stories and stuff like that. Going to be a lot of comic book related material, so please be coming back to the channel. Of course, I'm going to be streaming live, usually around 7 p.m. ish Central Time, but just come back to the page. You're never going to get the notifications from YouTube, so just be coming back to the page because I will have usually 2 or 3 videos dropping throughout the day over the course of the next couple of weeks. Got to grind. Now, today I'm discussing X-Men. Remember, as I've been mentioning in these last videos, I'm like a few weeks behind because I've been so busy looking for the house and all that stuff. I haven't been caught up on comics, but I'm getting caught back up. I'm getting current, and I just read X-Men issue number 4. Oh, by the way, my shirt is really wrinkly. Y'all know I don't apologize. I don't apologize for that. I just grab and go. Issue number 4, X-Men. We're going to be discussing, and the thing about comic books that makes, I guess, it's an interesting thing because depending on the narrative or more so the context that the book is in and the narratives that it's trying to follow, I guess, you can really see the lens or through the lens of the writer. And the best writers, unfortunately, it's not a whole lot of them. I guess that's what makes them the best. But the best are able to sort of mask what it is that they personally believe in. Or at the very least, not make the reader feel like they're beating them over their head with their personal like politics or social preferences and approaches and such like that. And Hickman has done a decent job in the past, and he's done a decent job here on the current run of X-Men. Now, there's a sequence where, for those that have not been caught up on it, you got Krakoa, the mutant island, which all the mutants are currently living on. This is sprung from House and they call it Dawn of X, but House and Powers of X, which dealt with all of that, them coming up with their own, essentially their own nation. And from that, there's been a series of different books that are all X-Men related. You got X-Men, you have X-Force, New Mutants, Excalibur, Fallen Angels, Marauders. I think I might have got them all, may have missed 1 or 2, but there's a bunch of books. All of them have kind of a different flavor, which is, something for everybody in that sense. Now, obviously, you have the main run of X-Men, which, is the centerpiece, right? Now, this is interesting, as they have been invited because of the political implications that this has. They have this council, the X-Men, and it sort of, yields these sorts of scenarios where they're talking to other world leaders about what's going on. Obviously, you have world leaders that have an issue with it, with what they're doing. In the previous X-Men comic, it was an attempted assassination, semi-successful, but now with the egg and everything, they can bring basically X-Men back to life, but assassinated Professor X. So there's obviously all of these different things that are happening, considering the fact that they now have their own nation and other people feel it is a threat. So there's this meeting that happens in Sweden with a couple of ambassadors, world leaders, and such. And the X-Men arrive as Apocalypse, that are in the actual meeting is Apocalypse, Magneto, and Professor X. And then they brought on Cyclops and for security purposes. Now, there was going to be an attempted assassination within this book, but again, Cyclops handled it. And because they had some power dampening things in their head to block, I guess, Professor X being able to read them, read their minds. But one person is always the idiot in the group, is like, man, this thing's itchy. And he attached it from his head, and it gave him the little bit of second that Professor X needed to alert him that this was happening on upstairs and downstairs, that there's these sort of team of assassins, or people that are ready more so to assassinate them. Obviously, they were unsuccessful. But that's some decent dialogue, or some interesting dialogue that happens here in this book that is, again, you're seeing it through this lens, and Magneto, if we consider him saying it, Magneto only halfway gets it, but he gets it a little bit. So he's talking to these leaders. He says, right now, you people are institutionally teaching your children to rewrite and unlearn history. Well, I promise you one thing: we will never forget where we came from, but you always do. Yada yada yada. And the interesting thing that I found is when he starts to talk about how, okay, we are actually just adopting some of the things that you guys have historically done. We're just going to do it better. He says, it's not going to be a war. It's going to be more of a silent war. That's sort of like you guys have waged. And in saying that, he says, you leverage people with debt, make them pay to be healthy and whole, make them pay to be educated, make them pay you interest so they can have a place to live. Then you own them, you control them. I have seen what you do. So it almost seems like he's basically saying, well, the debt is leveraging people, which I agree with, if we're looking at this in a real world context. But he oddly says, make them pay to be healthy, which essentially, there's no free health care, make them pay to be educated, which for the most part, public education is monopolized. So I'm not quite sure what he's meaning by that. But he's saying that if you can do these things, you can control these people. Somebody would have to pay for it either way when it comes to things like education and health care, if you will. But the reason why I only say that he halfway gets it is because Magneto recognizes here, Hickman through Magneto recognizes that this has been leveraged to, or more so these elements have been used to control. He just completely ignores I guess it's for the wrong reason, if it makes sense. Because he also talks about we'll buy your banks, we'll buy your schools, we'll buy your media, we'll buy your politicians. And then we have, we have bought all the rest. We will buy you because you have taught us that everything has a price and we're happy to pay for it. Then there's influence, yada yada, economic power, and he says we will not allow them inside our institutions because it's important they do not have anywhere to peddle their dangerous, outdated ideas, and so forth. So basically, he's saying that, hey, we're just gonna do like you guys do, but we're just gonna do it better. We're gonna control all of these different things. It'll be in our best interest, and so forth. But the thing that this stuck out to me because I think I want to be fair to John Hickman. I think this is okay. This is solidly done because at the end of the day, this all may backfire on Magneto and Krakoa and X-Men in terms of their approach, which I inevitably think that it's going to happen. So it may be an end game here because of this misunderstanding. But when we always got to use this as a lesson when talking about the American, not just American. Their complex or anything like that, or what governments or states do in general. They create issues out of thin air. They're artificial in a sense, in that they are there, but they cause the wound or they create the wound, right? And then they try to patch it up. That is more so what's used to control. It's not the fact that people need to be paying money to people that are going to help them be healthy or to educate. It's the problem is that the state has essentially monopolized these avenues, and they have basically put the people under this idea that they are necessary and the government and state is needed to facilitate these ideas, right? You talk about debt in both of those elements, healthcare and let's say education. Start with education. I talk about this with higher education all the time and how that used to be way more affordable than what it is now. I talk about how my mother went to college and, her mother didn't have much, but it didn't cost as much. It wasn't until, federal government started getting the grant and loan business and the price of schools skyrocketed. When you can just give money out willy-nilly to anybody that asks for it, you're going to give them grants or loans at the very minimum. what's happening is that these institutions are just outspending each other, and because they know that they're going to get the money, they're not necessarily like a business having to fight for your dollar. It's more of, okay, well, people are going to have thousands upon thousands of money loaned to them by way of the government. They're going to give those out regardless. What incentive do they have to be efficient with their spending? They don't. And as far as it's more regulatory. It's a similar thing with healthcare, but it's more regulatory in terms of talk about FDA and the inability and the difficulty it is to maybe come up with alternatives, be it through some of these like even like intellectual property laws. You can see my videos. I've talked about the gimmick in that. And that what it's done is the people that can come up with these alternatives, they are literally, it's illegal for them to do it, even if it's cheaper. But through the regulatory bodies, it allows people to basically use these sort of monopolization efforts to control entire markets when it comes to medicine. That is a thing that's very rampant. That is a thing that's very, very real. If the market was free and people were allowed to create these alternatives without having to wait through these lines or go through these processes, in which they, again, half the time can't even get approved to put these out on the market because of those regulatory laws, or more so because of the fact that there's some alternative or something that exists already like it in the market, and it's biting off of their idea, and therefore no matter if the person is able to, with their own personal resources, come up with alternatives that they're willing to sell for way cheaper than what the going rate is, they legally can't. This is an issue that happens throughout the government. So this is why I say he only halfway gets it. He gets it. He gets it. They absolutely use that to leverage them, but it don't really understand the sort of, let's say, the artificial nature of the government created problem. Then people advocate for the government solution, even though they are the ones that caused the problem. The problem would exist and wouldn't be a thing. Why does everybody want to contact me when I'm doing a video? But it wouldn't be a thing had they not got involved with it or got involved in it to the degree that they have been. So this book is interesting nonetheless, because the more you're reading it, the more you're like, what is this? What are the implications of this? What is going to happen out of this? Because the X-Men went a different route than they have for the most part historically. Now in this book, Professor X does talk about that. He's never lost his dream. And loving humans and wanting them to exist, to coexist. He's saying, I just got to handle y'all differently because, you guys freaking tried to kill me. You know what I'm saying? So this is an interesting book. But Magneto, he better get it, because if he thinks that that's just what it is, then he's going to be in for a rude awakening, and maybe he's going to ruin Krakoa's economy if this has real world implications. We'll see what John Hickman has, up his sleeve.